Like I say, most things have been forgotten. Like how Carlsbad Cavern 2,000 years ago, about 2,300 years ago, was actually a mine. It was a big mine. And we dug way down. I forget what we found there. I think we found limestone or something. I don't know. It might have even been something radioactive. I don't know. I forget. No, maybe it was iron or lead. I don't know. I forget. If you look at the old mining sheets, you'll see what it was. And I think it was maybe Indian. I don't really remember the actual race that was doing it for me. Maybe Indian or I'm not sure exactly. I forget. There's photos of everything. It might have been English though. I don't really remember exactly who was doing it, but it was one of them. And they had this big wooden scaffold that used to go out, and a big wheel. It was all wood, and I think it was a big wheel. And there used to be like a little thing, and eventually, and there was also a little trail that went down in. You know, the trail you walk right now, that used to be down in there. And they chiseled that into the hillside, and then they chiseled down. It was this big pit, and about 80 years ago, it flooded and it was filled up, and it was just this big murky pool right there, and nobody knew what it was. And I was like, "There's a cave down in there. That's my old cave." It was just a big water hole. And like 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, it was a big mine, and some explorers found it out in the desert, and they're like, "Hey, there's this water thing, blah blah blah." And I was like, "It's a mine. It's my old mine." So it's my old mining camp. And so they drained it, and then they put a path in it, and there was some mining equipment in there. And I think actually what happened was it was a radioactive storage unit. Actually, I think there was actually a radioactive, and there was actually full of heavy water. They found it was like the world's only source of heavy water or something. And they started using it for some other stuff. But basically, it's full of heavy water. Well, eventually the rainwater soaked in there, and I think the heavy water went out. But the calcium stuff grew over. The whole plan was that the calcium would drip down from the roof. I think what we did is we were pumping the water up and in, and we were creating a calcium carbonate skeleton over the reactive equipment. And we knew it would drip down and basically cover there's barrels in there, and the barrels were eventually going to leak. And it would leak out the radioactive material or whatever the material. Might have been some gunpowder. I don't know. It's like an old vault. And so, if you dug into the calcium thing, you'd find some radioactive material in there and some other stuff. And it was in barrels, and we knew the barrels would rot in 50 years. So what we did was we used the calcium carbonate and basically flooded the roof of the cavern, and it dripped down in through. We might have even had sprayers. I don't really remember. It was like 2,000 years ago. But basically, we encased all the equipment and all the mining equipment and everything in this calcium carbonate solution stuff, and it adhered to anything in the room basically. So there used to be mine rail stuff and stuff like that in there, and the calcium basically covered the floor and covered the barrels, and so then it contained what was inside the barrels, which is basically the radioactive material and some other stuff. I think there's also some rope stuff, and maybe even some gold or something. There's a stack of gold somewhere in there, or something like that. And they were taking some mine detectors, boop 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 boop. You know, thieves, fucking thieves. You know, like I said, one of them is highly radioactive and very dangerous. Like if you go near there, you might actually hear it. Because there was some radioactive, some plutonium or something, 232 or something in there. That's why we cover it in the calcium, because calcium, I think, will stop reactivity. I don't know. Anyway, there's also some rope and a mining train. I wanted to keep one of my mining trains intact, and we knew the mining train would rust, so we thought, well, we'll cover it with the calcium, and then it'll last forever. And like 2,000 years later, we'll have the outline of the mining equipment. Cool, huh? So we just dripped and dripped and dripped and dripped and dripped and dripped. So one of my mining trains is in there, and we covered it with calcium carbonate, and basically there's also a rope sample thing, and there's like they have a picture of it. They went and then they did the calcium carbonate over it, and it's basically a pile of barrels of rope and some other stuff, and there's also a stack of gold. And there's also the mining train, and also the the reactive material. In one of the corners, there's highly radioactive material. So it would just sit there and go. Anyway, I don't really know that much. I mean, it was 2,000 years ago. It was like 3,000 years ago. So anyway, and then some time passes, and now they're like, "Ooh, it's a cave." It's like, no, it's a mine. What are you talking about? I made a lot of money off of there, off of that. In my Irish accent. Yeah, but it was Indian or something like that. I forget exactly who it was, but or no, English. I think it is, maybe. I don't know. It was a long time ago. So anyway, yeah, and basically it was one of my big mines, and we mined way down, and we made a lot of money, or they made a lot of money off of it, and then we put the big elevator up, and it was this huge mining camp. There used to be a big photo of the thing. And there's this huge mining camp and stuff like that. It was 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, or 5,000 years ago now, or something. Anyway, so 3,000 years goes by, 1,600 years go by, and it's just this big murky pool, and people are like, "Ooh, what is it?" I'm like, "Oh, that's a mining camp." Anyway, yeah, and then they drained it, and then they built this little room down there, and then they started charging money to see the old mine, to see my own mine. 3,000-year-old mine. And then that makes money, and there's a bunch of other stuff, and I just have relics all over the place. So I mean, like my old ships, my Bismarck, like the Bismarck. It was originally a high-speed, big, huge, massive ship with like 12-inch sides. The whole point was it could like headbutt icebergs. Yeah. Yeah, right. The whole point was it was like, doom, iceberg. Nothing could puncture the skin. It was too heavy. It would just get dented at worst. So, I was kind of tired of the whole like running an iceberg and then losing ships. So I built the Bismarck, and then they would do ice exploring and stuff, and they could ram through ice like. Anyway, but that's what the Bismarck really was. It didn't have any cannons on it. They cut those in later on. They went, and they put the cannons in and stuff like that. But originally it didn't have cannons. There were 3 of them. And there's a high-speed one, there's a research or aircraft one, and then there was the cannon one. But, and they were just thick wall ships, like 12-inch thick hull ships. Like the hull was 12 inches thick or 24 inches thick. It was like this, I think it was 12 inches thick of solid steel. Anyway, basically nothing could touch it. Not even torpedoes. You go, and it just go boom. Even torpedoes, they couldn't torpedo it. They couldn't do anything to it. You just put little holes in it and dent it some. It's like, well, it's got some dents. That's about it. I'm serious. They even nuked one, and it was like, well, it rolled over a couple times, and then it righted itself, and then it's fine. It's a little radioactive now, but that's about it. Just be a little radioactive. Nothing more. And and by Irish accent, because I'm from Ireland. Anyway, not really from Ireland. Actually, like I say, I'm actually from Germany, and German, and English and stuff, and all that. So anyway, so yeah, and then we built the Bismarck, and basically they put it out like this big thing mill would pour this solid. It's a solid pour, one single pour for the Bismarck, one pour, and basically. It came out, and these big machines went chink for the front, and then it pinched the front, and then it let go, and then they continued making it out, and as it came out, they had this big machine that would go, and it held the sides, and so just one big massive 12-inch thick solid steel pour. Yeah. Yeah, that's how they did it. That's what how they built the Bismarck. And that's what made it different than every other ship, was basically as a single pour, 12 inches thick of solid steel. And truly epic and record breaking. There'll never be another one like it, ever. So, I mean, nowadays they use the half-inch thick or 4 inches thick. No, the Bismarck was 12 to 15 inches thick. I think we tried 24, but we couldn't get it to bend. So, like 12 inches thick, solid steel, or 15 inches thick, solid steel. It was the thickest hull we could possibly make. And they used to call it the Beast because it wouldn't stop. It couldn't churn. It wouldn't churn either. It was like, It would literally do this throughout the water.